I will tell you that first we are now live again, and I hope this time is working out. Welcome everybody to our event today with Dr. Tom Habib, which is called Intimate Couples Becoming Second Tier. We had a breakdown with the text, so we had to redo the event. And I hope you find the way here. You have found the way here, but on our website, you now can only write the comments. When you click on the wisdomfactory.net live streaming, you can write the comments here, but you cannot see it. You have to see it on the Wisdom Factory YouTube channel. So here we are now, and we just start from the beginning, and we will see what comes out.
Okay. Well, we're still in Paradiso Integrale. We're still in hot Umbria in Italy. Still part of our Conversations That Matter series, where you can see an awful lot of what we put out, and on our website, thewisdomfactory.net. So I think we've covered that.
I think, right? Yeah, and we just go on, and we welcome Dr. Tom Habib, who is anxious to begin again.
But we can actually talk to him this time. He doesn't have to do a monologue.
I hope so.
Good morning, Mark and Heidi.
Hello. I'm glad you're game for this. Yeah.
So now you can introduce him, because we introduced him before, seeing that we had acoustic difficulties, and we just wanted to send you to our website where he had already done 2 talks, one last September with us, and another one with us and Martin Uche. It was somewhere in spring.
Well, anyway, Dr. Tom Habib is a clinical psychologist. He's working from his practice in San Luis Obispo in Southern California. He's active in the San Diego, I say this every day, San Diego area integral community. He has an interest in learning how to sustain, if we can put it this way, we spaces. What's the right container for making that happen? And he's found some interesting differences upon whether or not people who are participating are intimate couples, like Heidi and I are, yes, or not. And this is interesting to us as an intimate couple, and I expect it to be of interest to others as well. Friends. So, we presuppose that people have some understanding of psychological development, expressed in integral terms, but just be forewarned, we might lapse into some techie talk, integralese, so to speak, now and then. Let us know if we're not coming through, okay? So you might want to start, Tom, by telling our watchers anything else you'd like them to know about you, or you can correct any lies we've already told about you.
Okay. No, you were pretty accurate, Mark. So, as you said, my work is with couples, but simultaneously, I'm working with San Diego Integral, trying to create a container in which we can actually realize a we space. And it is from non-intimate people that I'm getting the lessons and the structure and the difficulties, the blocks that arise, that I'm bringing back into couples. And what today's talk is going to review is some of the insights, and even more specifically, what actually works when you're in the intimate relationship to try to rise up a person to second tier capabilities. At least this state experience usually associated with a higher stage. So that's what we're going to be talking about, is lessons from the collective we space to help intimate couples reach second tier explorers. So 3 premises today I want to touch on. Did you want to go first, Mark?
No, I'm just going to kind of direct you, and you're doing fine, so no problem.
So 3 premises I have. One is that I think a lot of members in the integral community find themselves in a relationship that's first tier, even though they individually may have the capacity to do second tier. Number two, the intimate relationship is the most difficult relationship to do second tier. And part of the reason is, I'm sure, Mark, you've shown Heidi lower centers of gravity. And if she doesn't have that developmental perspective, then it's going to create mistrust and unpredictability. But because she does have that developmental perspective, she's able to respond to you when you do hit your higher center of gravities. Number three, it's really in the intimate relationship where we run into all the challenges of what it's like to create second tier dialogue. Blocks that show up are huge. And unless you can do things like compartmentalize it, to have a nice rhythm between separation and connection so the person doesn't feel smothered, a developmental perspective, as we said, then it's not going to be possible. So I wanted to pull up a quote by Rumi, one of our favorite. And let me see if I can get this up. Do you see the quote?
No, it's not on the screen.
No, not yet. Now we see ourselves. You have to click on the quote on your screen.
The quote.
Now we see you
Okay.
again. With calmness. You will get it.
You may reach me at 760-845.
Do we see it?
No, not yet. I still see you.
Click on his quote.
Yeah, he has, when he shares, he hasn't shared yet. You have to go back to the green arrow.
There with the arrow.
And
Yeah,
then
and now
go
you
to,
see us, and now you have to, yes,
There.
there's the code.
Okay.
okay, we see it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the Rumi quote. Your task is not to seek love, but merely to seek and find all the barriers within yourself that you have built against it. In the 13th century, Rumi seemed to understand it, and we're really not articulated it until another 700 years later, which is pretty amazing when you think of it.
Yes, it is.
And am I back?
Yep.
Yeah, you are.
Okay. So we're really talking about making that transition. And can you see the next screen, couples line?
No, you have to do the whole procedure again.
Jeez. Okay, I'll get this down. Sorry. Share.
Yeah, unfortunately,
Mhm.
the technique is not always to see us. Yeah, now you get it.
Okay,
There
we have it?
Yep, couples line of development.
Right. So here's the couple lines of development. And the folks that haven't seen the previous seminars on the Wisdom Factory, they're there. You can just pull them up. But just real briefly here, we all start as safety and attraction. This is when we fall in love. It's wonderful feelings. You know, it's all sensation and sexual projection rather than the empathy and understanding that doesn't happen to first love.
Mm-hmm.
But what we're going to talk about today, and you notice how it's green, it aligns with spiral dynamics. We're going to talk about making the transition from relational to first love. And I actually have lower right directives that we actually do, that we implemented both in preparation and then what we do to actually help our spouse to reach the level of first love which would be a second tier capacity. And this is when we have resolution of some of the pre-transcendent fallacies going on, where it's now finally based on empathy and understanding rather than chemistry and projection. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, I can follow that. Yep, no problem here.
So back in the screen. So we need to get to the directives. I want to move right into it and actually how you do it. And one of the things that we do to do it is an eye contact exercise. When I'm working with a couple in therapy, and if they're a couple that aren't getting along, they're really at the role stage, trying to get to the relational stage. And if I ask this couple to look at each other for 1 minute, and they can't smile, they can't break eye contact, they are so visibly upset trying to do it that level of exposure really upsets them and makes them incredibly uncomfortable. And with them, all I'm trying to do is calm down some of the physiology, because that upper right, for those of you familiar with integral quads, is just so overactivated because of all the problems in the relationship. Just trying to calm it down is a bit difficult. But what we're going to do for our purpose is use that in order to help a couple get into first love, the second tier capabilities. And this is how we're going to do it. So one more document. And you should be able to see the document.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So this is the directive to establish the first love stage. The goal obviously is to develop the intimate we space. The method is to prolong moments of resonance and shared feeling. The beauty of resonance is it relies less on verbal communication, and it uses a shared emotional state to connect. And what I want a couple to do is find a moment that is very poignant and emotionally powerful, that has resonance. And obviously you have to decide ahead of time that you're going to hold eye contact 30 seconds. And when do we do that? We find those emotionally laden moments that we can experience together, perhaps when we're watching a movie, or listening or dancing to music. And we're looking for those moments that are filled with joy, love, intimacy, sexual intimacy, sadness, change, loss, separation, anything that's poignant, anything that resonates around the human condition. And what we're doing is we're tapping this external source of resonance to promote joint resonance. So, number 1 and 2, and then we'll talk about it. We find that moment, and ahead of time, we get our spouse to agree. We're not just going to glance at each other. We're not going to give in to a little bit of the anxiety of overexposure. We're going to actually look at each other with prolonged eye contact for 10 minutes. And initially, that's all you're going to do is number 1. There's 8 of them here. And then once you have that down, where you're keeping that steady eye contact, then what you're going to do is feel beyond your own feelings and feel into your partner that's resonating in the field that is between you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
In terms of what we want. So there we are. Something came up. One of the easiest ones to do in the world, especially for the folks that have children, is when you see those moments, say when a child's struggling and they accomplish something, and we feel it so deeply. And then we look at our spouse. I do this with Christine a lot. It's been so much fun actually actualizing this. And then we hold it we can feel the resonance that exists between us as we stay there. And then it even gets better down the road when I show the rest of them. But I'm curious, have you two ever done anything like that?
Not really. Really?
Not consciously. No, it happens sometimes.
Yeah.
Shall we decide on something?
Not now. Later.
Oh,
So you can report back later how it works for you.
okay.
But with the couples I've had done it, they really like it. And like any kind of state experience, when we become familiar with it, access to it becomes easier. And that's going to be the bullet points that we're going to go on from here. But obviously, you got to get your spouse to understand that moment and to kind of co-contribute. The intention has to be joint, obviously, because it's a couple. And, whatever preparation talk we can do, and I have some suggestions later on that we can do to, help the person that's at first tier level. So, can I go on?
Yeah, you can. We mute ourselves because I noticed that there's still an echo when we are speaking, so we will be in the background, let's say. Okay.
If it's good at all, I don't hear the echo. Can we see the screen?
Not in the moment. You have to go back and do the whole procedure.
Oh, jeez. Share.
Yep.
And
Okay,
then pull it
now
up.
choose your.
Do we see it?
Yes.
Yep.
We do see it?
It's fine. We see it.
Oh, we do see it. I'm sorry. I apologize. So we begin with number 1 and 2. This can take at least 6 months to do, because what happens is it begins to open that field where it becomes a stronger ability between us. And then we add number 3. We begin to notice the commonality of feeling we share with countless others not there at this moment. We add this intention as we go. So to use our parenting metaphor again, is all the parents that have worried or have celebrated achievement and overcome an adversity, we can feel that moment with other people if we reach out of the field between myself and my intimate partner and try to reach beyond that field of all the other people that have gone through that. Number 4, we already said this one. Notice how it's becoming easier to enter this we space. So what I'm noticing happens for couples is they suppress the anxiety. Becomes, they're kind of familiar at that level of transparency. And it becomes easier to push back the negative visceral feelings and to use the positive ones, the heart space, the love, and the connection just becomes easier. As we go on, number 5, we don't even need that point in movie, the music, that moment. We begin to initiate this we space only with a look or a kiss. I call that kiss a kiss with intention. It's much more than a peck. It's much more than a goodbye. It's a reconnection to this space. And what you do it as an intention. You do the look as an intention that even sharing it to some degree with, with our spouse so that they can get used to it. And, we say to them, this is a kiss with intention. I'm going back into that space. We've done it with other poignant moments. That we really want to be able to access it, not dependent on external stimuli, but to be able to do it just as something between us. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think we sometimes do that, don't we?
We do.
Yeah.
It's a reason.
So you've probably been able to do it with a look at times between you.
Yeah, without rules, just intuitively. Yeah.
Say that again.
I said without rules, without following the instructions, just because it is spontaneous.
Yes.
You know? Mm-hmm.
Right. That's I think the value of really kind of specifying this out in the lower right is I know people always like to talk from the upper left, and we love that feeling, but the injunctions, the directives are in the lower right, and that's how we do it, because I'm even finding couples that if I can calm down the physiology and they don't feel too overexposed and too transparent, and with a little bit of structure, I can bring them to this space. And we know it's kind of like spreading breadcrumbs for them. So at least they know it's there. And it's part of the evolutionary imperative that perhaps we make stronger when we do this. So, but it really helps to concretize, operationalize this out for people, even I think within the integral community.
Yeah, I deeply
Should I push
believe
one?
that. I deeply believe that this way of exercising makes it normal, you know, especially when you haven't found an intuitive access to it. So I think it is really good that you have just follow some rules and try it out just for fun.
Right.
Follow directions. Yes.
Right. It is interesting, it's eye contact, because so many writers have always said the eyes are the window upon the soul. And it's very interesting that now, at this time, we're realizing, perhaps what they were tapping when they wrote those things. And as we work on couple relationships, we try to get them to the second tier where, remember, I call it first love, because for the first time, you're actually in love with your spouse. It's not a lot of projection. You're really resonating with them. You're feeling them. And that's why I call it first love, because early on, it's really more projection. And then we're thrown into the role stage at stage 2, because they're not quite what our projection had hoped they were going to be.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on, if you're okay.
No, I just wanted to say that the fact that it is projection, and even it happens to us, no, it's when you get upset about things with yourself, with your partner, and then you realize, do you really see the other one or not? Is it only your idea, what you are looking for? So I think it's makes much sense.
Yeah, I tell couples, in the very best relationships, it's 50% projection. Everyone else approaches 100% projection.
Okay. We're doing well.
Yeah.
Yes.
So one of the ways we're humbled by that, we stay open to, we ask the question, when you do that, I feel this. Now here's the open part. Is this true? And we absolutely stay open, humbled by that it's probably a projection in many times. We're on ground that is so sensitive, and there's so many things hitting, it's almost impossible. So Christine and I say, I don't know if some of the people know, Christine's also a psychologist, and she once said to me a number of years ago, if it's this hard for us, what do other people do?
Yeah.
And what do? They have to get educated. They have to understand what's going on, because flying by the seat of your pants is awful hard in intimacy to do this. Okay, let's see if we can go a little further. And I think I got this down. So we're up to number 6. Now this is when you get really developed, and you can initiate this feeling, this state experience with eye contact, and we begin to notice how the feelings are neither temporally, time-wise, or geographically being located, but the feelings are always accessible. And notice how this tracks some of the state experiences we talked in terms of our individual development are always there. And so one of the ways that I like to describe this one, I should be back on the screen, is I remember a visit to the Roman Colosseum, and in your neighborhood, Heidi. And while I was there, I had such a negative feeling about it. Even though it was, 2,000 years later, but I still felt the horror in that place. So in that instance, I believe it wasn't even temporally indexed. That even though it's 2,000 years later, and I'm not quite sure what I'm feeling. But as we speculate about these things, even though we don't have empirical evidence of it, we're all in the metaphysic area. That's what we love about this, is we get to speculate about the possibilities. But that's what I mean it's not temporally located. So, and it doesn't even have to be geographically located either. Okay, let's get back there. And it should be up there. So number 7 is, we notice how the we state persists even when there isn't eye contact. And that happens between the couple. That if you practice this over time, I expect this would be about a year of practice. And then number 8 is the same thing. Is notice how the we space persists even during separation. Not even when there's not eye contact, but even when we're apart from each other. So to be realistic about it, when we can do 1 through 8 pretty well, we're really solidly in first love. Very few couples can do this, however, and it's much more realistic to expect times when you float up to first love. That's what Christine and I do from the relational stage, which is our first tier, that to prematurely expect that we're going to be at that level all the time. That doesn't happen. It really takes hard work to get there and to do it, but it doesn't happen all the time. So, I had some people try this. I can't hear you right now. Are you speaking to me?
Yeah, we are trying out because it is bad again. There seems to be something today with Google, which is really not working. I don't know what we should do at this point. I actually would say we don't have time today, but maybe tomorrow we do it on Zoom, and then we post it on the website, because more in Hangouts when they do this stuff. We have checked it on the other computer, and it's very, very bad echo, not echo, when you're speaking, and it doesn't really make sense to continue when this quality is like this. So we say to who is watching now, we will do this conversation and post it on the website. Later to go to the YouTube channel, the Wisdom Factory, maybe within the beginning of next week, because this is just useless. This is a pain for everybody listening, and the content cannot come over. Okay.
It's not breaking up quite a bit.
It's really bad. You are breaking up and like distorted. So I stopped the broadcast here. Sorry, people, it doesn't seem to be our fault. It has happened to somebody else, my friends, this week, and it seems to be a Google thing. So I stop the podcast and please another time and you will let your heart respond. Okay? Just
Okay.
a bit of patience.